And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. Joining me, Juan Zarate. He's our national security analyst. Juan, good again to see you.
Bob, great to see you.
Afghanistan, as we move towards the troop drawdown here and the United States makes its exit, is becoming even a more dangerous place, I think, for some Westerners and civilians.
Yeah, what you've seen, Bob, before the election and now after is that the Taliban and other insurgents have been targeting civilians more and more, in part to send the signal that not only are you not welcome here, but you're going to be a target of our efforts as the drawdown occurs. And so you've seen journalists be subject of attacks. You've seen sites that are frequented by Westerners, such as restaurants, be targeted and now closed voluntarily. And now, most recently, doctors and medical professionals struck, charities that were running a hospital outside of Kabul. And so you now have a real question post-2014 for both Afghanistan and the civilians who are working there with the Afghan population. What does the security environment look like? With still, frankly, the questions as to what the numbers of troops will be moving forward for the United States and NATO. That debate is not yet settled, and you've heard different numbers from the administration.
Putting the numbers aside, though, is it possible that we could have a situation where it's just simply not safe for some of these non-government agencies, charities, doctors, to operate there because the Taliban is going to make it just inhospitable?
Potentially, and I think you may begin to see that in regions outside of Kabul, and certainly in the east and perhaps in Kandahar or in neighboring villages. And so it may become that you start to see a more bunkered mentality around the country where certain cities are safe relatively for Westerners, but going outside of those environments will not be safe. There was already a problem of the drawdown of troops bringing with it a drawdown of funds and civilian support. So that was already going to happen. The real question that you're raising, which is a good one, how should the civilians that are going to be operating there maintain their presence in light of the security environment? And that may rely, frankly, on the private security sector, which has been so reviled both in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Well, I was going to say, how does anybody fix this? I mean, how do you retrain the police or add manpower or bring in private guards, and is that acceptable?
Well, there's been tension. You and I have talked about this for years now. There's been tension in Afghanistan over the role of private security in Afghanistan. But I think more broadly speaking, this is the responsibility of the Afghan government. They've been trained now for years, both their military and police forces. The reality is their police forces are just not up to snuff to be able to prevent all these kinds of attacks. Elements of their military are pretty good. But to secure soft targets, we've even seen this in the United States and in the West, is very difficult. And how you do that in an environment where you have an ongoing insurgency, where the Taliban may make as a central part of their strategy the expulsion not just of military forces, but of Western civilian forces, that is a very difficult environment to secure. You're going to need the Afghans to do it. You're going to need private security. You're going to need some semblance of NATO forces to help secure the environment if you're going to keep the civilians on the ground.
So part of the legacy of the war, even after the war is over, is a lack of security there.
Well, I think that's right. And all of this, unfortunately, comes at a time where there's great hopefulness with the election. And I think the question here is, what does stability, what does life in Afghanistan look like post a U.S. drawdown? And the question of civilians on the ground is key to that.
We'll watch that one. Juan, thanks as always.
Got to watch it, Bob. Thank you.
And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.